cozy house, family, big brother's birthday. It's like a beautiful dream. His younger sister Yunfei blows up a festive firecracker and then congratulates him on his birthday. She asks to tell her about what he wished for his birthday. Ye Hao exclaims to her that if he tells her about his wish, it will not come true. But the girl insists. The father proclaims that she should not embarrass her brother, since he is already a 17-year-old man who may have secrets of a different nature. Mom also joins her father's speeches. Ye Hao is embarrassed by the fact that his father recognized him as a man, and decides to confess his desire anyway. He proclaims that he hopes that he and his family will be able to be together forever. Loved ones are touched by the guy's words and begin to open their arms, but soon their luck turns away from them. Lightning, falling from heaven, takes the soul of the whole family right before the eyes of the eldest son, from which he instantly melts on the spot. The whole house is covered with red flames, and then explodes altogether. After that, there is complete chaos in the air. A multi-story house is torn into two parts, and the bodies of the Ye Hao family fly to the ground. He calls them in the hope that someone will answer him, but nothing happens. The guy doesn't understand what's going on. He looks up and sees a huge red dragon with scarlet eyes standing in front of him. Opening his arms, he tries to attack Ye Hao. Suddenly, he opens his eyes and rises from the table with a squeal. It turns out to be a very bad dream from which he has just woken up, and it turned out to be a very noisy climb. Therefore, the entire lecture hall, including the teacher, notices him. The guy gradually realizes that it was a dream, and then screams and shouts fly at him. His teacher, he furiously asks Ye Hao why he fell asleep in his history lesson. The teacher also says that perhaps Ye Hao fell asleep because his lessons are not worth attention, or because he learned the material well, which he reported on the day before. The teacher asks to tell everyone present more about the epoch of the Earth OL. The guy immediately begins to apologize and begins to justify himself by saying that he studied late last night. After that, he takes a serious look and just starts the topic about the epoch of the Earth OL. But the teacher immediately stops the guy. He tells Ye Hao not to continue and tells the guy to go to the end of the class, and then listen carefully to him. Ye Hao gets up and walks to the end of the class. The teacher proclaims that he almost forgot that this guy is actually an excellent student. He means that if he had continued his speech, he would have started showing off his knowledge. And he continues his lesson. He tells the students to carefully write down everything said and informs them that this material will be present at the exam. On his device, he includes a hologram of the Earth epoch OL. The blue Earth is highlighted, on which fallen meteorites flaunt. The teacher starts the lesson. So, in 2036, a sudden and temporary chaos turned the entire planet into a game world full of dangers and opportunities. The younger generations call this time the epoch of the Earth OL in which these events take place. Despite the mighty monsters that have appeared, humanity also has something to give them in return. That is, frolicking in the course of evolutions of various kinds of classes and increased abilities. On the screen, which is located in the classroom according to the theme, warriors in iron armor are highlighted. After experiencing the first years of the disaster, 5 large clans were presented with monsters, and also established a new world order. At the end of the class, Ye Hao, who was watching this, fully agrees with his professor's speeches. He thinks that in this era full of dangers and mysteries, everyone spares no effort to raise their level. After class, the school defender Lo Feng runs up to Ye Hao, the 5th level of strength. He tells Ye Hao not to pretend to be a fool and hand over the money for his protection this month. The guy standing next to him bursts into loud laughter, and Ye Hao is not laughing. He indignantly reminds Luo Feng that 2 years ago, a senior student tricked him into paying him for his protection, and that then he, like an older brother, protected him until recently. Ye Hao asks why he is now demanding money from him for his patronage. The bully hits Ye Hao on the stomach and proclaims that of course, then he was blind. Luo Feng reports that he previously thought that someone who had just entered school and instantly acquired level 3 had great talent. But Luo Feng proclaims that over the past 2 years he could not imagine that he himself would reach the 5th level from the 1st, and he would still remain on the 3rd. He calls Ye Hao trash and simultaneously rolls his face on the asphalt. Suddenly, Yunfei, Ye Hao's younger sister, comes out of nowhere and kicks the bully with a U-turn. Luo Feng instantly falls to the ground. His colleagues standing next to him freeze on the spot with horror and surprise. One of them informs the other that he heard that at just 16 years old and being at level 7, Yunfei herself knocked down a level 10 monster. Looking at them, she furiously asks them why they haven't escaped yet, after which they instantly run away. As he leaves, Luo Feng proclaims to Ye Hao that he is the scum who can only hide behind a woman's back, and that next time he will not be so lucky. They're out of sight, and then Yunfei begins to comfort his older brother and proclaims that they are wrong about him. She proclaims that despite the fact that the guy is only the 3rd level, he will one day undoubtedly become the coolest warrior. Hao pats the girl on the head and tells her to calm down. He proclaims that her brother will not admit defeat so easily. Then they return home. At this time, Hao reflects on his unusual failure. He thinks that, without a doubt, he is a scum who is not able to pump properly. Prior to that, Ye Hao had researched materials from the disaster to the present, and for all the time there have never been similar cases that a person could not raise his level. Hao thinks that it can't be that he really was the only garbage for the entire era of the Earth all. Now he thinks that he definitely won't be able to admit defeat. In the evening, the real birthday of Ye Hao takes place, and the whole family congratulates the guy to the cries of firecrackers. Holding a birthday cake, Ye Hao comes to the conclusion that he still has to protect his family and protect their well-being. He thinks that he has to become strong. Suddenly he remembers that dream. With the same beginning of the script, Ye Hao puts the cake back in place and says he wanted to eat fried fish. On Lindau Street, their mom says that if they go, then all the ready-made food that is made at home will disappear. However, Dad tells her that these dishes will wait. He says that since today is Ye Hao's birthday, then let his word be decisive. Yunfei rejoices at this. After already leaving the coffee with fried fish, Ye Hao is relieved that nothing special has happened, and also thinks that he was too worried. But suddenly a huge spider-like monster comes out of a crack in space. Papa Ye Hao takes the family aside, and people begin to run to the sides and scream heart-rendingly. One of them says it's outrageous since the monster can't appear. A safe space. The monster leads the people and the Shi family into a trap, where they begin to panic. It turns out to be a level 15 clairvoyant demonic spider, a world where dangers lurk from all sides. A ferocious and powerful monster, as well as unable to level up Ye Hao. How to resist him. How to survive. First, the Pope enters the battle. With a fist, he pounces on the monster and asks Hao to take care of his mother. He proclaims that even if he is only level 10, he will not allow his family to be harmed, even if he has to sacrifice his life. He assumes that in this way he will at least delay time. However, the monster very much doubts this. The monster bounces back and curls up from the man's blows. The spider proclaims that he is a weakling and that all people are insignificant by nature. Then one of his paws pierces the man's stomach. Then he flies down and falls to the ground. Now Mom is going into battle with the monster. She asks Hao to look after Yunfei and leave this place quickly. But luck quickly turns away from her, and she immediately falls into the clutches of a ruthless monster. The monster throws her, after which she flies to the other end of the earth. The father of the Shi family lies exhausted in front of the monster and calls his wife. The spider proclaims that the 10th level should taste good, and only begins to attack the defenseless father. But an arrow is flying at one of his paws, which Yunfei used. She proclaims to the spider that if he is afraid to attack, then she will do it. But the monster is not lost and immediately strikes back. The girl waves him away. Spider asks her about how she dared to provoke him. Yunfei informs Hao that she will detain the monster and asks him to take Dad and Mom away. From seeing the bloody fight, Ye Hao is thrilled on the spot. He thinks that the nightmare from his dream is starting to come true. Hao doesn't know what to do and gets lost. He thinks that he has only the 3rd level, but the monster still has the 15th level. The spider pierces his sister's stomach and proclaims that he feels more desperate. An absolutely logical feeling in the face of such power. The girl flies back and lies on the ground with her stomach curled up. The monster once again raises its huge claw and points it at Yunfei. He proclaims that she will become his food, and also gloatingly says that he hopes that the taste of a human girl should be delicious. Yunfei notices that she is too terrified to move anymore and therefore sits motionless on the ground. As soon as the monster starts attacking, Ye Hao immediately grabs his claw. He's trying with all the strength he has to protect his sister. Yunfei is stunned and horrified, but Hao asks her to run as soon as possible so that he can buy some time for her. He urges her to leave quickly as he feels that he will not last any longer. However, he says that even if he dies, he will at least be able to do it with honor. Upon hearing this, the spider bursts into laughter and exclaims that this is probably some kind of joke. After that, he pierces Ye Hao's back, from which he begins to bleed. Yunfei reaches out to him to somehow help his brother. However, Ye Hao insists that she leave, leaving the monster to him. With tears in her eyes, Yunfei falls into a stupor and does not know what to do. The spider grabs Hao already with 2 of its claws. In the hands of a ruthless monster, Hao thinks to himself that if he was strong enough, none of this would have happened. Ye Hao wonders why he can't raise his level of strength and asks himself about that. the reason for his weakness. However, even if his strength is running out, he does not intend to give up. The monster stands over Ye Hao and asks him about how such an insignificant 3-level trash still dared to resist the mighty him. He exclaims that he feels so sorry for him that he doesn't even want to eat Ye Hao. Hao's soul leaves the body. After that, the system cheat is started. Due to the fact that the accumulated experience of the carrier is already reaching the norm, the functionality of the master's account is activated here. Since the carrier has lost its combat capability, the system launches the master's account. At this point, the system picks up the account, and the account is not very simple rank. Yunfei gets up and starts running wherever he looks. On the way, she asks her brother for forgiveness 1,000 times. However, the ruthless monster catches up with her. He asks her about where she is going to run. The monster threatens her with death and runs right up to her from the front. With tears in his eyes, Yunfei wonders if her brother sacrificed himself just to gain a couple of seconds. She proclaims that she cannot escape from a monster like him. Therefore, she says that even if she dies here, she will avenge her brother. Suddenly, someone is heard from afar shouting that Yunfei should jump aside. Intuitively recognizing the voice, she does so. After that, the spider immediately flies to the place where she previously stood. Looking up, the girl sees that the monster is being thrown to the ground. She notices that the warrior who fights as a spider is her brother. However, this time Ye Hao looks different. After making a fire attack, the guy throws the monster back. His eyes turn scarlet and then begin to ignite with flames. Lightning starts to ignite from Hao's hands, coming out of the red mist. Ye Hao stands up for her sister. So, the system cheat and the activated account of the Lord started. How will Ye Hao vent his royal wrath? Ye Hao is still asking her sister to leave the battlefield immediately. Meanwhile, Hao begins to rebel and destroy everything that comes under his hands. He begins to approach Ye Hao and, like last time, proclaims that a 3-level trash like him can't just challenge a mighty monster. This time he threatens him with his death. However, Ye Hao comes up with a defense in advance. From his new power, he creates a blade, Shadows of Fire. After that, he activates his power and attacks the spider with lightning speed. Pointing the blade at the monster, he strikes it a couple of times. The monster flushes on the spot and says with horror that Ye Hao is definitely at the 3rd level of strength. He thinks that he definitely could not make a mistake in this. The spider asks the guy about where he got such a powerful force from. After stopping for a second, Ye Hao notices that he is tired and exhausted. He feels as if his body is being torn apart. The guy wonders why his body is in such a deplorable state. Kneeling and bickering, sword to the ground, he starts coughing up blood. The monster sees that Ye Hao is in a deplorable state and begins to rejoice. He teasingly asks Hao if this was his brief moment of fame. He proclaims that a weak little man like him, who has only the 3rd level of strength, will not withstand such a large load of power from his new ability. The monster exclaims enthusiastically that he should do nothing, because there is a risk that Ye Hao will soon die himself. At this time, Ye Hao opens the system and sees that he really has almost no health left, and now he can only rely on the golden energy scale. He comes to the conclusion that it is impossible to use up everything before the end of the battle with the monster. Otherwise, his imminent death awaits him. Looking at his thoughts, the spider suddenly begins to insult Ye Hao. He proclaims that he is such garbage and that I don't even want to taste it. In passing, he says that it was not easy for Mr. Kaienshu to help him open a portal to the safe zone, and that he needs to absorb as many high-level people as possible as soon as possible. The spider tells Ye Hao that he will die at this rate. Before he can finish, he is immediately surrounded by red flames. While the monster chattered incessantly, Ye Hao managed to apply one technique from his new power. He used the red-hot cell eruption technique, which eventually cornered the monster. Then the guy glares at the monster. He tells him to stop and die. From surprise and horror, the spider is at a loss. He doesn't understand how a 3-level can have this look in an overwhelming aura. Suddenly, at this moment, help comes from an unexpected place. A group of rescue squad appears behind Ye Hao. One of them reports that a 15-level poisonous demonic spider has been discovered, and the other tells everyone to look for the wounded and start helping them. A group of rescue squad runs past Ye Hao and exclaims that they need to destroy the monster immediately. But Ye Hao tries to stop them, saying that he is strong and that the monster can instantly kill them. In response, he receives more insults. One of the employees in the group says that only Ye Hao is dying and that he should not rely too much on the beautiful skin purchased at the 3rd level. Others turn out to be completely rude, and they order Ye Hao to get lost. They proclaim that even if the monster surpasses them in level, they have a numerical advantage. Therefore, they ask Ye Hao not to worry. In addition, the spider had only 30% of health left. Listening to this, the monster begins to smile maliciously. Suddenly, a spider's web flies at one of the employees. Then she flies to others. Then it covers almost all the employees standing in the attack. They understand that they cannot get out of it. The spider bursts into loud laughter, and then exclaims that he even begins to like people. He says that he didn't know it was so wonderful to rip people's heads off. He says that by killing everyone, he will get a level. The monster begins to devour all the helpless soldiers. The demonic spider has 3 levels of strength added thanks to the soldiers he killed. Now he has the 18th level. The monster ignites with a green flame and begins an attack against Ye Hao. He asks Ye Hao about how he likes his newly acquired powers. The monster proclaims that it is very difficult for them, monsters, unlike humans, to raise the level. He says that, after all, in the remote wilderness it is almost impossible to find a person with a level below his own. The spider exclaims that, however, as soon as they raise the level, they immediately become much stronger. The spider decides to have fun with Ye Hao first, and then eat him. He informs him about it. Ye Hao, when receiving his attack, feels like his power has grown many times. He wonders what he should do next. Hao feels that his energy is almost running out. He decides to get out of this place as soon as possible. Without thinking twice, the spider begins to act and creates a ball around Hao with the size of his body. He sticks it in there and starts torturing it. From his helplessness, he begins to rejoice even more and bursts into laughter. He ironically asks him if he wasn't very strong just now. The monster once again says that Ye Hao is garbage. The guy begins to slowly die in the hands of a ferocious demonic spider. And then the system proclaims that the energy and health of its owner is below 10%. Ye Hao has the finishing ability Hurricane of Red Flame ready. The system asks Ye Hao if he wants to apply it on the monster. The guy rises from a swoon and proclaims that for 3 years he was repeatedly bullied because he could not raise his level. He reports that countless people have bullied him. He triumphantly proclaims that today they will see that their so-called garbage will eventually become much stronger. Sticking his blade into the ground, he activates the Hurricane of Red Flame technique. The loudest cry comes out of the ground, and the fire that is nearby begins to spread at the speed of light and reaches the demonic spider. Level 3 Confrontation. And an elite monster, Ye Hao, who used the finishing ability. Will he be able to defeat the monster with one blow? Under the huge red flame of fire, the spider itself ignites. He proclaims that it must be ordinary fire, which cannot kill him. However, he feels that fire is made up of divine energies. The spider wonders about what kind of person. This is Ye Hao, dying under the scarlet fire. He asks a certain Mr. Kainshu to spare no effort against Ye Hao. After that, he goes to another world. The system proclaims that the clairvoyant demonic spider has been defeated. Ye Hao also receives 20,000 accumulated experience. Completely survived like a lemon, Ye Hao immediately falls to the ground without strength. He begins to thank God for being alive. However, before he turns off, he decides to do something else. More precisely, as soon as possible to collect a drop from it. He manages to collect the remaining artifacts. Hao receives 15,000 gold demonic crystal of the 15th level, 1 ring of luck, 5 pieces of poisonous spider web and iron clairvoyant demonic spider. The system proclaims that since the owner has suffered serious damage, 10,000 experience points are automatically used for recovery. The remaining 10,000 experience goes to wound healing. The result, health indicators are replenished up to 100%. Ye Hao gets into the user interface. He thinks that this place is more like the Milky Way, and wonders how this could have happened at all. He proclaims that this interface is completely different from his meager visual interface. And in reality, this place looks like a magical cosmos. Ye Hao finds himself surrounded by many beautiful planets. Visual interface. Since the min has changed, each player has their own visual interface, which is used to view and distribute the attribute, as well as access the inventory. Suddenly, Ye Hao sees before him the image of a man in a majestic red suit with many different patterns. This turns out to be the account of the Emperor of the Red Flame with the maximum level of strength, which is a source of new strength. Ye Hao. The system welcomes the owner of the Overlord's account, that is, Ye Hao. There are countless royal gaming accounts of the maximum level in the system, and the owner can use personal experience to gradually unlock all the Overlord's accounts. Since the owner's level reached 10, the Red Flame Emperor account was automatically activated. Ye Hao rejoices at such a great chance that has come to him. He can't even believe his luck. He finally realizes that all his efforts for all these 3 years have not been in vain, and were abstracted by the system. Despite the fact that the initial level of the Red Flame Emperor is the maximum, however, the owner still needs to accumulate experience by increasing the level connection between accounts. The stronger the connection, the more the power of the accounts will be revealed. The owner is recommended to get more experience as soon as possible to increase communication. Hearing this, Ye Hao is speechless and thinks that this is really a divine blessing, and that he couldn't even think of such a thing. He thinks that using the capabilities of the Red Flame Emperor it will be easy to get a large amount of experience. However, he believes that even this will not be enough, since there are many hidden dungeons and quests in this world. And even though combat power is at the core, but force alone is not able to solve any problem. He decides what he needs to understand, the optimal way to use the system. So, now about the Red Flame Emperor. He came from the strongest in the other world. He once led his clan and used the power of the Red Flame to unite territories under his command. So he became famous all over the world, and his descendants awarded him the title of Emperor of the Red Flame. Its level, maximum, attributes, darkness and fire, and the weapon, the Great Blade of the Shadow of Fire. The main abilities of the fire attribute are Eruption of a Red-Hot Cell, Twilight Flame of True Fire, Fire Dragon Bomb, and they all belong to the 10th level. Finishing abilities of the fire attribute, Hurricane of Red Flame and Scarlet Sparks. However, the second attribute is not unlocked. Seeing this, Ye Hao recalls that since the era of the Earth OL began, the combination and confrontation of attributes has become extremely important. He proclaims that in this case the first point in his plan is defined. More precisely, it is to accumulate as much experience as possible and unlock as many accounts as possible, and then form a squad with all possible attributes. He decides that in this way he will not lack any other attribute. The system tells him that the experience available to him is 10,000. The system also says that Ye Hao can choose to strengthen the connection of levels or unlock an additional ability. Ye Hao tells the system to strengthen the connection of the levels. He proclaims that now it is more important to increase your viability and unlock more accounts, and he decides to do abilities and other things after. The system accepts the order. The link levels of the current accounts are combined, and that combined level is the 12th level of forces. Ye Hao feels every increased power of every cell of his body. He asks himself, what if his personal core attribute has also strengthened? To see this, he opens the stats panel and sees that he is still at the 3rd power level. He wonders if this is really a disguise of his true powers. However, suddenly at this moment he hears a familiar voice and immediately exits the visual interface. It turns out to be the voice of Yunfei, who is shouting outside his room. When he wakes up, he sees that he is lying on a hospital bed. Hao also sees that all his wounds have healed and moreover, his health scale is rising. However, just remembering that it took half of his accumulated experience, he immediately becomes ill. Getting up from the bed, he still hears the confused screams of Yunfei, who shouts at the doctor, saying that the price for their father's treatment is too high. Her mom standing next to her asks her not to get excited, since Yunfei's wounds still haven't fully healed. Hearing their voices, Hao thinks about how good it is that they are fine. Yunfei proclaims to the doctor that even if their hospital used high-level treatment, it should still cost them 500,000. Now it's the doctor's turn to be indignant. He furiously asks her if she is aware of her current situation. The doctor proclaims that all 4 members of her family were under the elite toxicity debuff of a rare monster, and that they need to drink special medicinal potions for a long time to heal to the end. He informs, of course, that he, Mom and Yunfei can both choose how to be treated, since he will give a long debuff on strength, but will not kill them. However, the doctor says that besides them there are 2 other men who were less lucky. He says that if they don't take medications, then in the worst case their father can't last a month, and their brother can't last a week. So he gives them an ultimatum and asks them to act at their discretion. Upon hearing this, Yunfei sweats on the spot and almost faints, standing next to her mother, and the doctor asks her not to be nervous. Her mom proclaims that she will solve the money problem or, at the very least, sell their house. And the doctor says that she is still weak, that she should not worry. Suddenly, Ye Hao comes out of nowhere and exclaims that they cannot sell their house, since it is the mainstay of their family. He says that his parents worked hard for most of their lives to earn money for him. Ye Hao says that under no circumstances can they sell their house. Yunfei and Mom don't understand how Ye Hao got out of bed after being in such a serious condition. And the doctor does not understand at all how his patient, having received such serious wounds, was able to get out of bed. Meanwhile, Ye Hao proclaims that he himself will find the money to treat their father. Faced with huge medical bills, Ye Hao set himself a goal. What is he going to do? Running up to his sister, he begins to accompany her to the ward and asks her to go there. Yunfei asks him why he got out of bed. Ye Hao proclaims that everything is fine with him and that she shouldn't talk so much. He says that in this way she can aggravate her condition. The doctor on the spot is thrilled with surprise and asks him if the elite toxicity debuff has disappeared from him. The doctor, perplexed, reports that among the 4 family members, his injuries and wounds were the most serious. He wonders how he was able to heal on his own. Ye Hao replies to him that it doesn't matter at the moment. He tells the doctor that the most important thing is that he does not need treatment at the present time, which means that the amount should be less. He asks how much he owes, if his treatment is excluded, and how much money will be needed for the treatment of 3 people. The doctor proclaims that the total will be 300,000. At this moment, the doctor thinks that there is definitely something wrong with Ye Hao, since officially he has only the 3rd level. However, the registration speed is higher than that of the patient. From 60, Ye Hao says that 300,000 is certainly a large sum, but he asks the doctor to start treatment anyway. He tells him to give him an hour to find the money and bring it to him. Of course, the man does not believe this, but still gives Ye Hao a chance and, as a doctor, proclaims that he will wait for him. Ye Hao thanks the doctor and, after changing clothes, leaves the hospital. Sitting on a bench, he opens the system and his account of the current forces. He begins to come up with a plan of action. The guy thinks that although he is used to saving, however, even if he adds to the money received for the murder of a clairvoyant demonic spider to his savings, the total will not be 300,000. He decides that the fastest way to get money is to sell things from the inventory, and the most expensive thing in his inventory is a rare level 15 demonic crystal. He hopes that with the help of this crystal he will be able to get the round sum he needs. Demonic crystal. With some probability it can fall out after defeating a monster. It is the main material for making magic equipment. Its price increases depending on the level. Ye Hao suggests that if he goes to an official auction, he will sell the crystal at full price, but he cannot keep up. That's in an hour. He thinks that besides there will be a minimum bar for the level of participants, and his 3rd level is definitely not enough. Therefore, he decides that at the moment he has only one option. They say that in the underground of the 9th safe zone there is a black market where you can trade, regardless of the level. And these rumors reach Ye Hao. On the black market, several powerful groups speculate on prices, and there are plenty of dubious personalities there. Ye Hao thinks that he would never have gone there alone before. However, now he realizes that he will have to do it. At the entrance to the underground he is detained by 2 huge guards, and asks the one why he came. One of them ironically says that this place is not for children's games, and tells him to go back to where he came. Another wonders if he came here knowing what they were doing inside there. He asks Ye Hao if he still wants to go there. Ye Hao glares at the guards and says that, of course, he was aware of everything when he came here. He asks them if this place is famous for the fact that everyone can trade freely here. The bully looks doubtfully at the guy and asks him if he wants to sell things. After that, he bursts into laughter and exclaims that children's toys are not sold in this place, and that it's time for him to leave. The guy replies that since he dared to come here, his goods are definitely good enough. He asks the guards to let him through and tells them he's in a hurry. Another guard is already furious, grabs the guy by the collar and asks him about where such a kid can have good goods. He once again chases him away and furiously tells him that they don't have time to play with him. Suddenly, an old man with a huge bunch of guards comes out of the back door. He asks the goons to stop and proclaims that the boy is right. The old man says that they are doing business for the sake of profit, and also exclaims that they, of course, need good goods. He also informs that, however, in such trading conditions, all people have the right to trade freely. This old man turns out to be elderly. The old man says that he does not know what he wants to sell to Ye Hao, but asks to show the goods to him. The guy proclaims that he has finally met a person who is ready to bargain with him and ready to cooperate. He says he doesn't know if it can please his eyes, and pulls out a demonic crystal from his pocket. The old man freezes with surprise and recognizes a rare demonic crystal. The old man exclaims that he could not even think that their 3-level friend could have such a thing. He proclaims that they urgently need to discuss a deal and asks to let the guy in. He is released into a huge hall where a lot of people are standing in front of screens. Seeing this, Ye Hao mentally wonders if this is a black market. He thinks that he imagined the market in a completely different way, and that this place is more like a nightclub than a market. Ye Hao sees the merchants drinking alcohol and comes to the conclusion that the local owner is very smart. After all, if you give customers a drink, they will be more willing to spend money. As soon as Ye Hao goes to the elder's room to make a deal, he is detained once again. This time it is done by 2 men who are merchants. After seeing Ye Hao's youth, they begin to tease him in every possible way. One of them says it's lunchtime and that it's time for him to go home to his mom. "Drink milk." Another says to him, "It looks like the guy came here to buy snacks with the proceeds from the sale." They ask him to come closer to them, but before they can finish their mockery, the guards come for Ye Hao and push them away from him. They proclaim that this guy was a guest of the noble elder Lai, and then they take him away. The hooligans are enraged. One of them exclaims that even if they rely on the fact that they belong to the Huang Zheng group, they cannot do whatever they want. Another says that Elder Li is also a real bastard. Ye Hao is invited to the VIP room of the Huang Zheng group. The old man takes him to the table, and next to them are a crowd of guards. Ye Hao happily sits down on a chair. The old man proclaims that he omits the formalities and says that he goes straight to the point. He exclaims that he will speak directly, and says that although the demonic crystal is very valuable, it is only level 15. No sooner does he announce the price than Hao immediately interrupts him. He asks him if that's why he decided to bring down the price. After standing in a confident pose, Ye Hao says to the old man, since they have agreed to conduct a business conversation, he asks him to be less cunning. Ye Hao proclaims that even though he has the 3rd level, he is not 3 years old. He says that he is able to understand which things are worthless and how vice versa. And finally, the guy asks to name the price. Relying on the strength of the group, Elder Lai is trying to lower the price of the demonic crystal. How will Ye Hao react to this? The old man looks at Ye Hao and laughs ironically. He proclaims that although he has a low level, he is not weak in character. The old man proclaims that if an ordinary demonic crystal costs 1-2,000, then he will pay 100,000 for his rare demonic crystal. Ye Hao bursts into ironic laughter and says that indeed all businessmen are cunning. Hao asks the old man if he thinks he's really 3 years old. He proclaims that even if we take into account that the price on the black market will be lower than at auction, then his demonic crystal is worth at least 200,000. He asks, old man, if he will offer only 100,000 and exclaims that if this is the case, then he leaves this place. He gets up and goes to the exit and says that there will be someone who will offer more than 200,000. Thus, the boy is trying to bring down the price of his goods, in order not to be wasted once again. The old man stops the guy here and tells him that there was a misunderstanding. He proclaims that here he will not decide whether there will be a deal or not. Hao turns around and sees that the old man's strength level is not visible. The man says that besides, no one has ever been someone who would prevent the Huang Zheng clan from getting what they want. The young man wants to leave the office. However, even here he is detained by security. He comes to the conclusion that they are going to rob him. Hao thinks he'll have to fight, and that anything can pass in the black market. He thinks that if he uses the account of the Red Flame Emperor, then he will be able to get out. However, he thinks that even if he gets out, it is not profitable for him to provoke riots. You can't get a penny out of it either. He comes to the conclusion that this will only delay treatment. Yunfei and his parents. And then the old man pulls an envelope to him and proclaims that there are 100,000 in it. He also says that this is a huge sum for a child like him. The elder exclaims to listen to his advice to take the money and leave. Looking at the stack of money, Ye Hao thinks that he would never have thought that he would face such an unsolvable problem so quickly, which rests on strength. Hua thinks furiously. He doesn't know yet if there is an account of the richest person in the world in the system. The young man falls into a stupor. Unexpectedly, a young woman enters their office and asks the old man if their majestic Huang Zheng clan is cheating on their 3-level friend. She proclaims that this is really a shame for them. 2 huge guards chase the others away. Goons in the room and stand next to the lady. She tells them to let her join in the fun. This turns out to be the Beauty Mo daughter of the Han Mo clan. Her strength level is the 20th. The old man recognizes her and asks her about the purpose for which she came to such a dubious place. He teases her, wondering if she really came to compete with him. The girl asks not to say so. She proclaims that the opportunity to trade freely, the right of the highest price, are the main laws of the black market. The young lady says that the old man is much older than her and that he should know these rules much better than her. Seeing her name, Ye Hao thinks that he has definitely heard her name somewhere. The girl comes closer to the guy and says that he is very attractive. She proclaims that his rare demonic crystal is very interesting and that she will immediately pay 300,000 if he sells it to her. The old man is taken aback about this price and says that yes, he asked for a maximum of 200,000. He asks her why she paid so much money. She proclaims that the rich have their own quirks. The young lady exclaims that besides, she does not intend, like the Huang Zheng clan, to rob a 3rd-level boy. She tells the old man to spend 100,000 to restore the damaged reputation of the Huang Zheng clan and says that she thinks this thing will be worth the money. Out of the rage that appeared because of the lady of the Mo clan, the old man gathers his guards and leaves, leaving Ye Hao and the girl alone. The still amiable lady wishes Elder Lai a good journey. She exclaims that the next time they find something good, she immediately asks to call her. After their departure, the aura around Ye Hao and Lady Mo seems to be getting colder and colder. Ye Hao thinks that he has previously heard that the two largest factions of the 9th safe zone, Han Mo and Wang Zheng, do not get along with each other. In truth, the guy didn't expect to meet them today at all, and even get out of this situation with a win. The guy immediately starts thanking the lady and exclaims that he has a few more things that may certainly interest her. Without letting him finish the words, she briskly answers him that she is not interested in this proposal. This time, all her kindness disappears and she proclaims that she is not worth thanking, as she just took the opportunity to put the Huang Zheng clan in its place. Lady Mo says that his affairs are of no interest to her and have nothing to do with her. She says he just caught her eye. She immediately gets ready and starts to leave. Leaving the office, she tells one of the guards to give Ye Hao the promised amount. As for the demonic crystal, the girl tells the guards to find a use for it, and if they don't find it, he asks them to just throw it away. When she leaves, Ye Hao has the idea that she is just a tsundere, the type of person who at first behaves rudely and unfriendly, but later reveals his sweet and tender side. Ye Hao thinks that it doesn't matter anyway, since he has already received the service he needs. Meanwhile, in the ward of the father of the family, Yunfei and her mother ask the doctor about how much more is left to treat their father. The doctor tells them that his condition is still bad. Suddenly, a noisy and overweight middle-aged man enters the ward for everyone. He enters quite noisily and slams the door from the entrance. He rather rudely asks the doctor if it is true that these beggars have not paid their medical bills. He also wonders why they are still in the ward. From the words of the doctor, it turns out it is clear that this is the director of a medical institution. The doctor responds that they have already paid for primary care. However, they still have an unpaid bill for the hospital ward. The director grabs the doctor by the collar and rudely asks if he has confused their hospital with an orphanage. He proclaims that their lives are not as expensive as his medicines. The doctor replies that the boy is from their family. He said that he would get him money and asked him if he could wait a little longer. With eyes red with anger, the director this time hits the doctor in the face. The director asks him if there are sawdust in his head instead of brains. He proclaims that the boy has only the 3rd level and that he is still a child. He asks the doctor about where he will get 300,000. The director says that they have few dietary supplements intended for the treatment of the father. He says that even if the whole Shi family is sold together, they will not be able to pay for medical bills. He grabs the shoulder of Yunfei, who was sitting next to her father. He tries to remove her in order to somehow get closer to her father, who is unconscious on the bed. The girl begs the director to wait a little longer. A young lady asks to spare them. She says her brother will be back soon with the right amount. But the director doesn't listen to her. He proclaims that this is the only hospital in this safe zone and that beggars like them will not be able to still use up all their supplies. Place punctuation marks, commas automatically. Punctuation check. He tells Yunfei to go to his house to die if they don't have money. The director reaches for his father to remove him from the bed. Yunfei tries to stop him and rushes into Nemo's arms, but the man throws the young lady back and menacingly tells her to get out. Yunfei flies back and falls to the floor. At this moment, suddenly the door opens and Ye Hao enters. Having understood everything from the door, he glares at the director and literally orders him to take his hands off his sister, already grabbing Ye Hao by the collar. The hospital director furiously starts asking the boy questions. He asks him about who he is and how he dares to kick the door out of his hospital. The director of the medical institution says that Ye Hao is obliged to compensate for the damage that he has just done. Ye Hao can't stand rude statements and then looks at the man with the most ferocious and terrible look. Ye Hao rudely asks him if he hit a member of his family with this dirty hand that he holds by the collar. Despite all the difficulties, he collected the promised 300,000. Being face to face with a middle-aged fat man who does not care about medical ethics. The fine is late, but it will be paid. Weakened and insulted, Ye Hao grabs the director's hand and then sets it on fire at all. When he sees that his hand is on fire, he immediately runs for a fire extinguisher and calls everyone for help. He runs out of the room, simultaneously grabbing himself by one hand. The worried doctor runs up to Ye Hao and confusedly asks him about what he just did to him. He asks him a question about how his director's hand could have caught fire so unexpectedly. Ye Hao answers him that although the director has every right to expel them from the hospital, however, he still did something unacceptable to him. Or rather, the director insulted Ye Hao by hitting his sister. He proclaims that the director still got rid of him easily. He asks the doctor not to worry and tells him he will pay him another 10 on top for medical expenses. He also exclaims that if his father has a doctor like him, he will not worry about treatment. Hearing this, the doctor begins to smile nervously and indulge Ye Hao. He thinks his director deserves it. He knows that since he is the chairman's brother-in-law, he took full advantage of his position, and most of the employees hated him for it. He thinks that today he has finally been selected and that maybe in the future he will not dare to behave like this again. Ye Hao hands the doctor a card and proclaims that out of 310,000, the guy exclaims that now a doctor with a clear conscience can treat his family. The doctor answers in the affirmative and assures him not to worry. He says that the bills at their hospital are not just so high and that his family will get the best treatment. Ye Hao thanks the doctor and proclaims that he owes him, as he gave him time to collect the necessary amount. The doctor asks not to thank him for this, as he says that these are his duties. In the doctor's thoughts, the thought flashes that Ye Hao not only healed on his own, but was also able to collect 300,000. He thinks it was a very curious experience with an interesting young man. At this time, Ye Hao's sad sister is sitting next to the bed. She blames herself for the fact that the embittered director attacked their father and that she could not save him. For this, with tears in his eyes, he apologizes to his brother. She exclaims that if she wasn't as weak as she is now, she would have rebuffed their abuser long ago. Ye Hao replies to her that it's not her fault and that you shouldn't blame yourself in this situation. He pats her on the head and says that it's him too late, and that's why she suffered because of him. But he assures her that everything is fine now. The girl proclaims that if it was a debuff, she would be able to participate in dungeon competitions tomorrow after school. Yunfei says that she would like to win and use the prize money to improve the financial situation of their family. The girl says that, however, now she will not be able to participate in the competition, let alone win it, and a debt of 300,000. Hearing this, Ye Hao is delighted. He asks her if this is not the same competition that is organized by the school every year, and that it is not there that they give a decent amount for winning. The girl answers in the affirmative and also says that this year, the amount will start from 500,000. Yunfei is disappointed to say that she has been preparing for this event for a whole year, and now everything has gone down the drain. Hearing the amount, Ye Hao is even more delighted and asks the girl not to worry about anything and to continue treatment. He decides to take all financial matters on himself. Ye Hao sets a new goal for himself to get a monetary reward. In this competition, the next day, at school, all students are invited through the microphone not to the annual school festival quest race. The host of the show proclaims that there must be rumors among the students for a long time about the size of the cash prize. On account of this, the presenter wants to report something. He proclaims that these rumors are true and that this year, calling really starts from 500,000. Depending on the degree of progress in the dungeon, money can be added to this amount from above, and there is no limit to the addition. From this, all the students begin to scream even louder and exclaim that this is great news. The host asks them how they think the prize is so big this year. The host responds to himself, saying that it's because this year's event is sponsored by the Han Mo clans. He asks for the applause of the audience, and the same Lady Mo comes on stage with her guards. The disciples begin to rejoice at the beauty of the daughter of the Han Mo clan. They proclaim that her beauty is dazzling and that just looking at her, the heart instantly melts. The presenter proclaims that the good news does not end there. The man turns out to be the part-time director of this elite school. He exclaims that the winner of the competition will get a chance to join the Han Mo clan's fighting squad. From this news, the audience begins to rejoice even more. Some of their students say that it stimulates better than any other monetary one. Moreover, the Han Mo clan's battle squad is included in Volume 10 of Dungeon Progress. Getting into the Han Mo clan's battle squad is almost like reaching the peak of your career. Standing among the crowd, Ye Hao thinks about what he has heard, that the competition between the squads of different guilds is great. However, he asks a different question. More precisely, he thinks why the beautiful Mo is going to select talented fighters as schoolchildren. He wonders if she's really in such a hurry. However, he comes to the conclusion that it does not apply to him and that he only cares about the cash prize. The host announces that this year's dungeons will be held in the Shadow Forest. A rumor runs through the crowd that no student has ever passed this high-level forest. One of the students nervously proclaims that the lowest level of monsters in the dungeon is 5, and the final boss is a creature of the elite 10th level at all. Another student says that everyone in this hall has about the 5th level. So, going there is like condemning yourself to certain death. The final boss turns out to be an Elite 10 level elite monster named Shadow Village. One student from the crowd begins to resent the school and wonders how the school can give students to the Shadow Ancient. Ye Hao, on the contrary, begins to rejoice at what he has caught. Such an easy way to earn money. Meanwhile, the crowd begins to get indignant from such a difficult level task. But the presenter asks them to calm down. He proclaims that this inst is really quite complicated, and besides, it is a PvE and PvP zone. He exclaims that therefore, based on these weighty reasons, this time it is possible to unite in teams, the limit of which is a maximum of 5 people. The crowd of students begins to rejoice and list all the advantages. United groups. Some of them proclaim that in this case it is possible to join a team with stronger participants. And others say that since it's fashionable to unite, it won't be so hard to kill an elite Shadow Ancient of the 9th level. However, one of them still starts talking about the huge disadvantages of creating groups. A student from the crowd asks those standing next to him that isn't it with PvP mode that a real fight will begin for the murder of the final boss, and that you may have to constantly fear a stab in the back from the team. Others begin to join the student. They begin to realize that even if they perform alone or with a team, the situation given to them is extremely ridiculous, and that it requires much more strength than they actually have. Meanwhile, Ye Hao comes to the conclusion that the school gives the opportunity to team up in a system of 2 install modes to give students a real experience of survival. One student from the crowd asks the moderator about how individual progress will be determined if they are united into groups and teams. The presenter replies that he has no doubt that many of those present have the same question. He exclaims that during the competition they will accumulate points on their own, and the points for killing the Shadow Ancient will be divided among the group members. He informs that the team that received the maximum number of points for his murder will share the first place among themselves. The director proclaims that, even if he does not evaluate the passage, he will still observe them during the competition. And the last thing he says to the whole hall and all the students is that if they defeat another team in PvP, their points will go to their current team. The crowd is surprised and horrified, as such a fight can bring huge competition among the participants of the competition. Everyone thinks at once that it will be too cruel a spectacle. They ask the director a question about whether he thus awakens them to fight against each other. Without answering this question, the director understands the hand and solemnly exclaims that he declares the start of the competition open. The whole crowd cheers at this, and they, too, gradually raise their hands. The solemn and long-awaited dungeon competition begins. How many points will Ye Hao score? After a controversial and heated testament, a crowd of students begin to prepare for the competition. An already assembled group from the crowd begins to look for a 5th level DD in their team. A DD or damage dealer is a player in computer role-playing games in a group or individually dealing the main damage to opponents in battle. Its main task is to inflict maximum damage in minimum time. One of the group members replies that he knows one high school student who can be joined, but for this you need a level 5 heal. When Ye Hao passes by the group, one of them asks him about what such trash of the 3rd level is doing here. They tease and insult him in every possible way, saying that it's time for him to clean the toilets. One student even announces that they need to leave, as he is afraid that Ye Hao will ask them to join the group. And the most terrible thing is that all this is happening in front of many participants and Ye Hao himself. When he proudly walks away, raising his head, they start laughing even harder. In her thoughts, Ye Hao asks them to calm down. He thinks that even if they begged him to join them in the group, he would never do it. He comes to the conclusion that he does not need extra ballast and that acting alone will be the most convenient option for him. He approaches the teacher standing at the blackboard and tells her to write him down too. She looks at him in surprise and asks him about where the rest of his band members are. He exclaims that he intends to participate in the solo and again asks him to record it. She begins to worry and proclaims that he has only the 3rd level and that it is very dangerous for him to go there. The teacher tells him to think carefully before setting foot there. Suddenly, a huge disciple appears behind Ye Hao and proclaims that the garbage of the 3rd level, and he asks the teacher not to worry about him since he is not even worth it. This turns out to be Ye Hao's former abuser named Luo Feng. Next to him are 2 more students who protect their admin. One of them insults Hao again and asks him, "Tom, how such trash? How dare he talk to Luo Feng in such a form?" Another asks Luo Feng to give them permission to beat him, simultaneously calling him garbage. Since Luo Feng is hierarchically higher and stronger than them, they call him Big Brother. In large groupings, the same change applies. Luo Feng asks them to wait and ironically proclaims that after all, Ye Hao is his big brother and that he should not be treated like that. He suggests that Ye Hao get on all fours and bark a couple of times, Thinking that this option is better, Luo Feng proclaims that in this case he will probably take him to the dungeon with him. Two guys standing next to each other burst into loud laughter and exclaims that he gave out a brilliant idea. Now Luo Feng is still furiously asking Ye Hao to start barking like a dog. Deciding to tease him, Ye Hao asks him about how dogs bark, to which he blurts out the loudest woof that is in this place. Ye Hao, barely holding back his laughter, looks at the puzzled faces of his defenders, and Le Feng is the last to realize what he just did. He falls into a stupor, but when he comes to, he immediately attacks Ye Hao. A teacher standing next to him immediately stands up for him. She tells them to stop and proclaims that if they want to fight, they should do it elsewhere. The teacher proclaims that you can't let go of your hands here. Just like last time, Luo Feng leaves with a defeated ego. As he leaves, he exclaims to Ye Hao to have the courage to run away from him, since he will be waiting for him in the dungeon to check his real qualities. Ye Hao starts joking again, saying that he doesn't know how to spell the word escape and that he doesn't intend to do it. The teacher asks Ye Hao to stop and not talk like that. He replies that he won't do it again and asks her if she will wash it down. To the competition, the teacher replies that his bravery is commendable, but the final result will still determine his true strength. She proclaims that since he is so eager to compete, then she, so be it, will write him down. Ye Hao thanks the teacher and immediately enters the dungeon. Entering, he thinks that this time the most interesting thing for him begins. The system congratulates Ye Hao on entering the dungeon for the first time. When he enters the dungeon, Lady Mo notices and immediately learns that he is the same boy she encountered in the black market. She proclaims that he is an interesting boy. Two huge guards of the Han Mo clan in black masks and a cape are still standing next to her. Lady Mo says that even if he is only level 3, he still dared not only to come to the black market, but also dared to defend in Stas alone. She proclaims that she wants to see what he has, except for the courage piled up in full. The guard standing next to her, hearing her words, asks her if she thinks that a kid like Ye Hao will successfully pass the dungeon. Lady Mo tells him that they should wait a bit and enjoy the show. Ye Hao enters the dungeon and immediately enters the Shadow Forest. 5 10th levels. Immediately after appearing in this world, he notices that he was thrown into a random point of the dungeon. He thinks that, perhaps, they did this so that the teams would not arrange a massacre immediately upon their appearance. However, this is only to the advantage of his cause. The guy decides to clean up the nearest territory from small mobs as soon as possible and get additional experience for them. One by one he kills them. However, he notices that killing them is extremely unprofitable for the use of his strength and time. For every small mob killed, he gets only 10 pieces of experience. He notices that the area of the dungeon is too large and that the monsters are also completely dispersed. He thinks it takes him too long to kill small mobs one at a time. A little later, he begins to blow up the earth in huge piles so that mobs in those places immediately died in large numbers. However, this method also turns out to be useless. The guy came to the conclusion that in order to win the competition, he needs to find and calculate as many high-level monsters as possible. Suddenly, Ye Hao notices how a bunch of small children are moving along one path that leads straight to the slums of the forest. He decides to go after them in the hope that they will lead him to a bigger mob. A little later he notices that he has gone too far into the forest. However, he still keeps going there. Looking up a little, in the dark wilderness he sees a huge red web in which a man stands motionless. He is numb with surprise and horror. After recovering a little, he sees that this is a girl named Ruan Tian Tian Hiller, who has the 5th level of strength. Ye Hao, who is going to win the competition alone. A girl hanging from a tree. What will he do? At the moment when Ye Hao approaches to save the girl, she miraculously regains consciousness. It's as if she wakes up from a terrible nightmare, and only when she wakes up, she proclaims that she was abducted by a spider monster. Not seeing Ye Hao because he is standing too high, she immediately screams and calls people for help. Suddenly stopping his heart-rending scream, she looks up and sees a young guy. Ye Hao asks her to be silent with all her might. He tells her that if she wants to live, then she should be lower than water, quieter than grass. The guy proclaims that if she continues in the same spirit, she will attract monsters, and that even then he will risk his life to save her, which, of course, he doesn't want. Having examined his face in more detail, she recognizes her savior. She asks him if he is Yunfei's older brother, who is still unable to raise his level. She wonders how this can happen to him. But more than that, she becomes more interested in how he was led into a dungeon that is teeming with dangers. She asks him if he wants to die voluntarily in this place. The girl worries about him and tells him to run away, leaving her. She thinks that if he has the third level, then saving her, he can also die. So she asks him to leave and tells him not to wait for the monster to approach. The guy answers her that she is his sister's friend. And besides, if Yunfei finds out that he left her, she will kill him. So he asks her to be calmer and wait. With tears in her eyes, the girl begins to thank Ye Hao. However, she still tells him that he only has the third level, and that he will not be able to cut the web of the elite 8th level in this way. Hearing this, Ye Hao smiles maliciously and says that this is just a level 8 Rarnik. He lights a fire, and a huge red web is instantly covered with a scarlet fire. The girl frees herself and immediately falls to the ground. She is clearly shocked by such an outburst of the guy, because a 3-level person clearly cannot do this. From the red fire, the guy shouts to her to get out of there immediately and find her group as soon as possible. Ye Hao says that being here alone is quite a job. Suddenly, a huge drop of fresh cobwebs drips onto one shoulder of Ye Hao. He looks up and sees a huge red widow standing over him and Ruan Tian. This, it turns out, is the 8th level spider. A huge handful of poison from that widow immediately falls on them. The guy takes Ruan Tian and at the same moment throws himself to the ground. At least they think they jump to the ground. In fact, Ye Hao and Ruan Tian land in a huge red web. Since the web is cramped and because there is no room, Ruan Tian lands directly on Ye Hao, which puts them in an awkward position. Ye Hao immediately decides that this is a trap that the Red Widow has built especially for them. He wonders how he did it so silently and quickly. Then Ye Hao immediately realizes that this is the mechanics of the elite monster in the dungeon. He berates himself for not realizing this earlier. The situation turns out to be even worse, because now a girl appears in his basement. Suddenly, the web twists into a huge cocoon, and Ye Hao and Ruan Tian are tied together. The girl immediately begins to panic and shout that in this state they will definitely die and that it's over. Ruan Tian starts waving his legs and arms in panic, thereby further creating an awkward pose for Ye Hao. She thinks that the Red Widow who is standing right in front of them is going to eat them. Annoyed, Ye Hao tells her to calm down and not move. He tells her that otherwise they will get entangled in the web even more than before. Ye Hao begins to think about how to get out of this terribly red and uncomfortable cocoon. He sees that the spider was waiting nearby until they were trapped. Now he definitely has no doubt that it was built by a monster. The guy remembers that he has a system of access to the accounts of the lords. However, even though his abilities have improved, he still hasn't gained a new level. So he thinks he's going to leave it. And the distribution of points for later. Ruan Tian, with tears in her eyes, proclaims that she does not want to die here. But suddenly the Red Widow looking at them leaves without killing them. The girl rejoices and tells Ye Hao that maybe she didn't think they were tasty enough for her dinner, and therefore left. She thinks they are going to salvation. However, the guy replies that based on the information about the behavior of the Red Widows, which he knows, she most likely did not eat enough and went to look for food. When the spiders catch people, they immediately lay their eggs on people after they are full. He proclaims that, most likely, the Red Widow will return after taking a sufficient amount of food. Hearing this, the girl freezes with horror of surprise. However, after she begins to actively swing her arms and legs, saying that she does not want spider eggs to be laid in her, Ye Hao immediately regrets telling her such terrible information. He asks her not to move and to be calmer. However, the girl does not obey him and begins to cry even more and beat her legs against him. Ye Hao comes to the conclusion that if things continue like this, they will never be able to escape. He sees that they are too tightly bound and too closely pressed together. Ye Hao thinks that if he uses the Red Flame Emperor's abilities, he will most likely injure Ruan Tian. Therefore, he comes to the conclusion that there is only one solution left. He begins to tear off Putin from Ruan Tian's side with his teeth. Looking at the guy reaching for her chest area, she thinks he's going to molest her. She asks him what he is doing and tells him not to behave so indecently. The guy looks at her and asks her to stop fantasizing about him. Instead, he asks for her help and tells her to move faster. Ye Hao thinks that fortunately, this web is not poisonous and besides, it is quite fresh that it has not yet had time to completely harden. However, it is still difficult for the guy to tear it off with his teeth. Due to the fact that the web flies on the skin of Ruan Tian's chest during the passage, she begins to make strange sounds similar to moans. Ye Hao tells her not to make such sounds and tells her to help him with opening the web. He proclaims that the web should harden very soon and that after that they will definitely not be able to escape from this cocoon. The girl also reaches out to Ye Hao and begins to tear off the web with her teeth. The fact that they are snuggled up to each other creates an awkward atmosphere, which Ye Hao feels. When they are messing with the web, the girl accidentally bites Ye Hao, thinking that she is biting the web. The guy, screaming hysterically, asks her to watch what she is doing. Suddenly she makes these sounds again, and for this Ye Hao once again scolds her. She apologizes and says it's because he touched her there. The guy openly tells her not to say words to him that he can misunderstand. After arguing a little more, they finally completely clear the cobwebs and finally enter the ground. Ruentian immediately sits down on the ground, and Ye Hao lands on his feet. She immediately starts a blog thanking God, for which they finally got out of this web. To which Ye Hao tells her not to relax ahead of time and says that the Red Widow can come to them at any second. He suggests that she immediately flee from this place. The girl says that her legs hurt and continues to sit on the ground with tears in her eyes. And it is at this moment that the sounds of the approach of the Red Widow are heard from the forest. Ruentian immediately gets up from his seat. Ye Hao tells her that she must have a group to return to. The guy is trying to hide Ruentian under his arm and protect her from the attack of the red spider. He tells her to go to them and ask them to come to his aid. Ruentian tells him that even if he tries to look cool, he should take into account the current circumstances. The guy immediately heads towards the monster. At this moment, Ruentian grabs his clothes and reminds him that he is only at the 3rd level and that in a battle with an Elite 8 level monster, he will easily kill him. She tells him to run away from this place immediately. Ye Hao laughs maliciously and proclaims that he did not go to the dungeon to escape from the first mob. He solemnly says that his goal is hunting. Therefore, the guy says that this statement of hers was insulting because he was going to have a good time with the red spider monster.